Hi everybody, thank you for having me here today, particularly thanks to Mo for inviting me and the rest of the panel over. Today's panel is about Bitcoin, the elephant in the room. I moved to Dubai just 2.5 weeks ago, and I moved over from London. And Bitcoin has been in my life since 2010-11, and it came into my life and my professional career because of gold. I run a gold trading platform. And the similarities to me between a lot of the reasons why people were buying Bitcoin or interested in Bitcoin were clear to me because of the same reasons that people were buying gold. And so that was where my interest in Bitcoin began. And the conversation in London about Bitcoin and then later blockchain has moved very, very slowly compared to what I'm seeing here just in the last 2.5 weeks. And so it's been an absolute pleasure to sit here and hear about all these ideas and visions that are coming out of the Global Blockchain Council and other areas as well that is happening. However, all of the chats that we've had today, we've kind of brushed over what's been happening with Bitcoin. And not only what's happening with Bitcoin, but what has happened with Bitcoin and where it will go in the future. And so I'm hoping that between my questions and your questions and the great panel that we have here, we can get to the bottom of why we're not talking about Bitcoin, where it's going, and if it is in fact going anywhere. So rather than risk mispronouncing everybody's names, it would be great if you could all introduce yourselves and also give us your favorite myth about Bitcoin that you've ever heard. And we can, don't bust it just yet, but let's just mention it and hopefully we'll sort of bust some of those myths in the next few minutes. So do you want to go first?
Alex Alexandrov from coinpayments.net. My favorite myth about Bitcoin is that it's only used for illegal activities. So I'm going to come back to that later.
My name is Marco Krohn. I'm the CFO of Genesis Mining, a mining company. My favorite myth about Bitcoin is that it's not real money.
Hi, this is Matej Tokaj. I'm the CEO of Bitcoin.com. And one of my favorite myths about Bitcoin is how the mainstream media is sometimes misinterpreting the Bitcoin mining, how Bitcoin mining activities are burning down when a Bitcoin mining farm actually happened to burn down in China. And they tend to say that the whole mining is collapsing.
Hello, my name is Esma Vogor. I'm a tax lawyer at Baker McKenzie and Bitcoin enthusiast. I write my PhD in relation to iGaming and Bitcoin and taxation. So pretty cool combination, at least I think. My favorite myth about Bitcoin is actually the Silk Road. Everybody speaks about Silk Road if I talk about them with respect to Bitcoin. And it's always cool to have that conversation starting then and prove them wrong.
Hi, my name is Zahiri. I'm a managing partner at Binary Financial, and we focus on brokering large block trades for the high net worth clients and institutions. So if somebody wants to diversify their wealth and buy like $5 or $10 million worth of Bitcoin, they usually come and talk to us. My favorite myth about Bitcoin is that it's been declared dead at least 89 times. That's my favorite myth.
Great, so we've got some, I'm sure all of them will probably be busted very quickly when we're talking about it. I just want to get a feel for the room. Does anyone here, you don't have to admit to if you don't want to, own Bitcoin? Okay, so I'd say less than, I should put my own hand up there. Well, yeah, all of you should have your hands up. Okay, so let's, a small amount in the room. So, okay, so one of the things that I think we should absolutely talk about is what's happened in the last week, which is the price of Bitcoin. So if all of these myths are true, why is the price climbing? Where has the price come from? Because it was at $1,000 an ounce a few years ago. Why is it climbing if it's just driven by criminal activity, Silk Road, it's not real money, and the mainstream media don't understand it? Do you want to start, Harry?
Sure, Jan. So actually, that's like the #1 question people ask me on a daily basis. Like, Harry, why is the price of Bitcoin going up and going down? And I tell them that typically when there's more buyers in the market, the price will go up. And if there's more sellers in the market, the price will actually go down. But actually, in all seriousness, the reason that we believe the price is actually going up right now is a couple of factors. #1 is you just hear about, there's not really any bad news about Bitcoin this year. Everybody's talking about blockchain. And anytime you talk about blockchain, and if it's good for blockchain, it's going to be good for Bitcoin. And on top of this, too, you have other cryptocurrencies like Ethereum that are actually doing very, very well. So everybody kind of sees this space as becoming more mature. On top of that, too, there's an event called the Halving this year, which means that right now 3,600 Bitcoins are minted every single day. in July, at some point, half of that is going to be minted every single day. So about 1,800 is going to be minted like every single day. So what's going to end up happening now is like you actually have a decrease in the amount, and Bitcoin has actually become a store of value and diversification for wealth for wealthy individuals. So you're seeing a lot of buying just because people have clearly a fear of missing out. There's also short squeezes going on. So all of these factors will lead to the price of Bitcoin actually going up. We're pretty bullish on Bitcoin, and our price target for Bitcoin now is probably at least $600 to $700 in the near term.
Alexander, would you like to comment on your? Yeah. Sure. Do you have a?
So Bitcoin price, one of the major drivers this year is the fact that the halving is happening in July. I think that's actually driving a lot of the market speculation, because what happened in the last few years, we've had some bad news, like MTGOX got hacked. That destroyed the price. I mean, it was at $1,200 in 2013. And then after that, there was a couple of major hacks, thefts of Bitcoin and things like that kind of discouraged a lot of people from it. And that was sort of the time when it was declared dead, one of the times again. And it recovered from it. So years later, skip to now, what's happening now, we have a lot of new exchanges that are much more secure as a result of the previous hacks that basically in Bitcoin, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So in some ways, it was a good thing that it has happened. I mean, it sucks if you were affected by it. But as a community overall, it really opened doors and made people think deeper about the security of their exchanges and their operations. What's happening this year is that faith is coming back because it's been a few years of stability, and in normal industry, it probably will take 10 years to recover, but at Bitcoin, 1 year is like 10 years in stock market, right? So like 6 months from now, half the companies that are, starting out today won't be there around. And so this is a very fast-paced environment. And like again, Ethereum, like you mentioned, it has had a positive effect because it's got a lot of coverage, and it's an alternative coin that's finally getting some sort of coverage from the media, and it's driving back a lot of adoption to Bitcoin. We're seeing on our side as Coin Payments, we process payments for Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all those other coins. We're actually seeing volume increasing steadily month after month in the last 9 months. Where before it was kind of stagnant, the same amount of transactions were happening month to month, and all of a sudden now, since November 2015 to May today, we've went up 6 times in the volume that we see in Bitcoin. So that's showing us that people are using it more and more, and combined with the fact that it's about to halve, we're going to see prices going up. And our personal target, we believe that we're going to see Bitcoin at about $800 by August. I mean, it's kind of a bold statement, but that's truly what I believe, so we'll see if I'm right.
So you heard it here first, $800. Mate, you kind of involved very much in the sort of education and content production, and you're probably sort of, I believe, best placed in terms of commenting on what you're feeling the general sentiment is around Bitcoin. Yes, we've seen this price hike, but you've been watching it for a long time because of your background with Bitcoinist and Bitcoin.com. So what are you seeing, because we sat here today and there are some great projects, so we can talk about how support of blockchain pushes up the Bitcoin price, but actually none of them are using the Bitcoin blockchain. So how are those two things working in parallel?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I believe that this huge hype about blockchain is definitely doing good with Bitcoin for sure. The problem, of course, is that some people don't understand that blockchain would not work with Bitcoin. Without Bitcoin, and that's a huge mislead in this whole segment. And everyone is talking about the blockchain, but no one's really talking about the currency itself. I believe that education is super important, but I also believe that I heard one of the speakers, I think the gentleman was from IBM, where he said that no one really needs to understand the technology, they just need to use it. I actually agree, but not at this point. Maybe in the future that's going to happen, because a lot of people don't understand how credit cards are working, and they don't need to understand. But the Bitcoin and blockchain industry is still really young, and we are at the phase where people who would like to get involved do need to understand how the system works.
And Marco, you work for Genesis Mining, which is focusing on Bitcoin mining. And when you get kind of attitude saying we don't need to know about Bitcoin in order to be doing something with blockchain, how are you finding kind of the response to what you're doing and your company's doing? Are you having to kind of re-educate people about the importance of Bitcoin to blockchain?
Well, we have to explain them often because these people that are coming to us, many of them, they are not experts in the field, of course, they can't be. But they generally understand or heard about Bitcoin. I think this blockchain discussion or the focus on blockchain is coming more from the banks and from the banking direction, from insurance companies. But most of our clients, they basically understand what Bitcoin is, and they are also interested in Ethereum and Ether mining and so on. So they find the whole concept of cryptocurrency interesting, and they are not so much actually interested in the underlying technology. They see it as some kind of like gold nuggets they can mine now. Yeah. Maybe one more point about the price discussion. A couple of good points were mentioned here. I think another good point is that let's say in the last year, there was a huge discussion and a huge fragmentation in the Bitcoin community about the block size increase. There were two camps formed: Bitcoin Classic, Bitcoin Core. This all hurt Bitcoin, and some people certainly broke away from Bitcoin, moving somewhere else, and were frustrated by the lack of scaling of Bitcoin, because that's one important point. Bitcoin, and that's not widely known, maybe doesn't scale that well. However, there is now some progress. I think this discussion is mainly over, at least for now, but there is some technical progress. So there will be segregated witnesses. As an on-chain technology, there will be Schnorr's signatures, which also will help on-chain scaling. So these are two important innovations. There will certainly be more discussion about the block size increase, but we will see some scaling on-chain. And there is other important technologies which are coming now: Lightning Network, Thunder Network, which is kind of a second level on top of Bitcoin, which will allow Bitcoin to scale to MasterCard, Visa card levels and beyond. So these are all interesting new technologies. And in addition to that, there is also Rootstock coming, which allows smart contracts via a sidechain, bringing this and coupling this to Bitcoin. So lots of interesting stuff going on there.
So Esteban, just based on the price and the volatility that we're seeing, where are you from a sort of taxation? And I'm assuming you're also quite involved in kind of what's happening on the regulatory side of things, because the taxation. What kind of attitudes are you seeing there? You know, we see the price jump like we did in the last week. One of the first reasons I hear about why you shouldn't buy Bitcoin is because of volatility in it. And what kind of sort of reasoning are you seeing, or response are you getting from the regulators and kind of institutional clients?
Yeah, so for me, it's these are all pretty interesting developments. I'm already involved in Bitcoin like as of end of 2012, 2013, and I started to focus on taxation there. And my clients are most of the times like our e-commerce clients. I have Bitcoin-related clients, e-commerce-related clients, and what I see there is, in first instance, when I spoke about Bitcoin, they were all like, "Hey, really don't touch that. I don't want to speak about that. I heard about Silk Road. I don't want to speak about it. The price is interesting, but I don't care about Bitcoin." And now you see the change, and the blockchain technology discussion is really interesting actually for corporate clients, for my big clients, because they're really following all this innovation, and they really want to understand how it works. For them, interesting in order to implement, but I think also if you look at regulators, they also understand now what we're heading to, because in first instance, when I was in conversations with regulators, a lot of times it was like very hostile, because they didn't want to speak with clients which I had. For example, banks who didn't want to open a bank account, regulators who said, "No, you don't need a license because you're doing whatever activity, and I don't want to give my opinion about this on paper." And now you see a change. Now they really want to speak with clients which I have, and for me that's really interesting development, because I think here right now we're at the border of like getting Bitcoin and blockchain into like a whole new level, being more into the mainstream area and getting it well known for a different reason, and that's actually the technology behind it. So.
Yeah, I think the regulation thing is something we should definitely talk about, like past attitudes and something now. You know, for myself, sort of running a retail gold trading platform, we got a lot of requests kind of 2012. People wanted to buy gold with their Bitcoin. And so we went to our bank, which is a big British bank, And we said to them, can we start accepting Bitcoin? And first of all, they said to us, we have a policy on Bitcoin, and that is we just hide under the table when someone mentions it because it's not regulated. And so they didn't know how to answer it. And then 6 months later, they came back saying, absolutely not. You can't do anything with Bitcoin. It's money laundering. You can't do anything. And every which way we tried to deal with Bitcoin, it just wasn't an option for us. And so we ended up leaving it. Then another 6 months later, we find ourselves kind of at a round table with 10 Downing Street with the same bank. They're going, we love Bitcoin. What can we do? How can we help you? And they'd effectively delayed our business by a year because, we wanted to do this. So, Harry, you're running a fund. What kind of attitudes have you had from regulators and people also wanting to invest, worrying about the regulatory aspect?
Sure. So actually, there's really, really multiple areas you have to look at in terms of regulation. So for us, we have actually a long-only fund. So that's actually regulated by, the Securities Act of 1933. We can only deal with accredited investors. So when you're talking about a hedge fund structure, if somebody wants to deploy $5 million into our long-only fund, we're regulated under the hedge fund, kind of how any hedge fund would actually be regulated. And that regulation is very, very different than, let's just say, you're dealing with a Bitcoin exchange. So Bitcoin exchanges, you have, dealing with consumer protection. So the thing with Bitcoin is it's so unique. It's a commodity. It's a currency. It's all of these different things. And that's why regulators are having such a difficult time trying to classify it.
That's actually, sorry, it's something I meant to bring up, because Bitcoin, we're talking about as a currency, and so gold, the physical thing, isn't regulated. It's the instruments and the exchanges that facilitate you to do it. So, but in different countries, we're seeing, do you regulate Bitcoin, the currency, or are you regulating the instruments, or are you regulating the exchanges?
It's not even different countries. It's in the same country. In the United States, the IRS looks at Bitcoin differently than, let's say, the money transmitters. So for us, so we have a brokerage business, but we tend to operate, in jurisdictions where the banking laws are definitely a little bit more friendly towards Bitcoin, such as, Hong Kong, Singapore, all these different countries. Even Luxembourg, Bitstamp just got their first license. And I think a lot of it is because of the whole Silk Road issue where, people only, if you talk about money laundering, Bitcoin is actually the worst asset for money laundering because it's pseudo-anonymous. It's actually not anonymous.
Do you want to name the best one for money laundering?
The best one's actually US dollar cash. Yeah.
Well, maybe I can respond on that, or maybe elaborate a little bit on that, because I always compare Bitcoin with iGaming. So iGaming, all of a sudden, you had the Chris Moneymaker effect in 2004. He won the VSOP, so a big poker tournament. And then all of a sudden, online poker was booming and everybody was playing online poker. A lot of money went in. Regulators had no idea what to do. And if you would draw the landscape, at least for the European Union, with respect to iGaming legislation, you had monopolies and non-regulated countries in 2008, 2009, and then you see a shift in that, that countries started regulated. And I think that you will have the same discussion all over again with Bitcoin. So my conversations with legislators, a lot of times in the beginning it was pretty harsh in the sense that they didn't understand what Bitcoin is. So that was the first thing what they need to understand, what is it, what can you do with it? And on the other hand, I think you see many developments in that area. People and legislators also understand that this is something which they need to address. I mean, the OECD, so that's the global body, giving guidelines for at least economic aspects, but also for tax-related aspects. They mentioned virtual currencies in one of their papers, in one of their very important papers to look into more thorough. The European Court of Justice had a very interesting VAT case in relation to Bitcoin, which was very promising also for the community. And that's all these type of discussions, what you see with legislators is pretty difficult. And also difficult because legislators can actually, like you explained, they can slow down your business. They can even shut you down if necessary. But in the end, I think if there's a good conversation with the community and legislators, educate them and make them understand on what to do, I think that it's a pretty good case for in the future.
Does anybody else want to comment? No. So I think it's probably worth kind of just taking a small step back and just saying, based on what we heard this morning with all these great announcements, why are we still, or should we still, be interested in Bitcoin? Because I would argue, I still am interested in Bitcoin, but I think that Bitcoin was probably the best marketing push and ploy for a technology that we've ever seen. You know, Bitcoin went out there, it played on everyone's kind of desires to kind of get money for nothing effectively when they started mining it. I know we had to pay for the electricity and things, but now that we're here and we're talking about it in developed nations, you know, is it only really needed for the unbanked, say, that don't have the infrastructure that you can get from a banking system? Why do we still need to be sat here in a country that's got great financial infrastructure? You know, we can all get access to cash. We don't struggle to spend money day to day. Why is Bitcoin something we still need to talk about?
I think, I'm biased toward this. I think we need to talk about Bitcoin because look at the price. In 4 days, it went up $170. What kind of return on investment? It's the best performing asset right now. If you invested in Ethereum in 2014 in August, you had a 600% return. That meant if you put in $40,000, you would have returned almost $2.4 million.
To be fair, though, we could
Yeah.
probably pick any stock on
No.
the market or any
No,
mentor
I
and
think
say,
that's the
this
thing
period of
with
time you could have
Bitcoin.
invested.
Yeah, with Bitcoin or any of these other cryptocurrencies, they're a new, unique asset class, and they're extremely liquid, and they're not controlled by any government. So, do I put my faith? If I had to put my money on any currency, I would rather bet it on something that's controlled by computer science and math than in, let's just say, some types of central banks that continue to print money. So that's just my personal opinion. And I think for diversifying wealth and even investing, people need to actually look at that. So that's why actually Bitcoin is important, because it's the single biggest innovation to happen since the internet, in my opinion.
Okay, so on the price, though, what drives price, though, is, you know, demand for it. And demand comes from what you can be doing with it. You know, like is it a medium of exchange? How's the infrastructure going? So do you want to talk about that, Matthew?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment about it. Basically, what I most like about Bitcoin is that I can be my own bank. I think it's really, really important to say every time whenever we're at a conference, because no one can take away my Bitcoins. If you're smart enough and you know the ways how you handle like a cold wallet, or how to keep your Bitcoin safe, maybe on your device, or use Trezor. There are multiple cold wallet devices existing in the industry, which are really easy and then great units to use. I believe that's one of the safest way to keep your funds. And having the possibility to save your money and to save your fortune in a currency that no one can ever take away from you is one of the greatest advantage of Bitcoin. And I cannot really say anything other than that, which would be as safe.
Only if you shut down the internet, then you shut down Bitcoin. That's
Right.
it.
I don't see any possibility to that either.
I fully agree with you. It's very important that Bitcoin has this option that I can be my own bank. Yeah, I have the bank kind of, I think even Obama mentioned it in a statement, that this is kind of bringing the bank into your pocket. On the other hand, I'm a little bit doubtful if this is the case for 99% of the people, because most of the people, they will just say, okay, it has to be very, very easy to use. Once was said, Gavin's grandma has to be able to use it to become a real success. 99% of the people, at the end of the day, they are lazy, and they rather trust someone if it simplifies the process for them.
That's kind of the point I was trying to make, is that, you know, are that many people that anxious about their banking system? Because
I
everyone here does use banks.
Yeah,
So
I believe they should, though.
Yes,
I
but
think
that
it
itself
very
is
much
entirely
depends on where you are in the world. Yeah?
Yeah.
If you are, let's say, it is like that. If I ask some friends in Germany, they are not so much afraid of it. But if you speak to people from Crete or from Greece or so, they are way more afraid of their money. Or from Argentina or Venezuela. Venezuela has hyperinflation. Russia lost 50% of its valuation of its currency. So in a country where there is little trust in the central authority, where there is little trust in the monetary system, like in Zimbabwe, for example, it's very, very easy to explain Bitcoin and to pitch Bitcoin to the people. It's very easy. In the kind of, let's say, Western European world, it's a little bit more difficult. But nevertheless, when people do international wires and have experienced how much broken the system is, banking fees, it takes 5 business days to send something to Japan, you have intermediary banking fees, you do not even know even your bank cannot tell you what the fees are. It takes long. It's really crazy. The whole system feels like in the 70s. And in fact, the system is back from the 70s and many of the SWIFT system and so on. The credit cards were invented in the 50s. So this whole system is broken and it's kind of ripe for disruption and for change. So I think this is a huge selling point. Whoever has contact with international wires, he will see the benefits of Bitcoin clearly.
So Alex, I wondered just from what Marcos just said, is the attraction though in Bitcoin and the demand, where are you seeing payments going to and from? Because, luckily, not everyone is in a situation like Venezuela or Zimbabwe or kind of the majority of the unbanked of, let's take, for example, Africa. Or, where are you seeing the demand come from?
Before I answer that, I was going to just add to what they're saying. One of the great benefits of Bitcoin for the developed nations where they do have a bank account, they're not worried about, using a credit card or switch it out.
Musical microphones.
Probably just be arrested. Yeah, so with the, they don't have any concerns about using the financial system that they currently have because it does the job just fine for them. Even those people find the advantage in Bitcoin because if you have funds and you put them in the bank right now and you went into the bank and you try to withdraw more than $5,000 in cash when you need to, your bank's probably going to make you wait. They're going to impose capital controls and things like that because of money laundering or whatever other issues that they might think you'd be doing. You basically are you have restricted access to your own capital in the sense, and a lot of people see that as an issue, like me, myself, like if it's my money, I want to take it out whenever I want to. With Bitcoin, I don't have to ask anybody. I don't have to check what the daily limits are, I can just get it, send it. I have no restrictions into when I'm sending money worldwide. It's like an email, I can just sort of send it and it's there instantaneously. No bank can offer you that. And if they do, they'll put a restriction limit on, like I know in Canada, we have a debit Interact system that allows you to send money via email, Interact Send. And that imposed $3,000 a month limit. No, sorry, not a month, a day. Which is not that bad, but at the same time, if you're trying to buy a car or something and you're making a private sale, you can't use that. Now you have to call in, waste time, talk to people on the phone. Like, it's just so archaic. Like, this sort of reminds me of Blockbuster or those video rental stores. That's what the banking reminds me of right now. You have to go in there, wait in line, and get your video. And then you have Netflix, right? Like that, there's no brainer why Netflix killed that model, and that's what's happening to the banking right now. Bitcoin is basically, streaming movies in comparison to the Blockbuster model.
But is Bitcoin then actually just a wake-up call that the banking system needs in order to be improving these things? So are we, in fact, looking at the banks, which is certainly the case in London, where they're learning about what the attraction is for Bitcoin, like these reduced costs, this speed, there's very little questions asked in terms of why you're sending money. Yeah. Is Bitcoin just a wake-up call? And in fact, we're going to see banks turn around and go, do you know what, we can do better, and we will.
It will never happen because banks don't talk to each other really well. So if a Bank of England does that, they can have their own token, but Bank of TD won't accept it because they'll be like, no, we got to use our coin. And then they're going to have the same thing as they do with checks. You get a check from one bank, you deposit it, and now the bank is going to put a hold on it, which is retarded, really. Like, why would they do that? They don't trust each other, right? So with Bitcoins, you can just automatically send money and it's there. And that's the freedom that it offers, right?
Okay, so let's say I decide I want to send you more than $3,000 today. Lucky you, for a start. And then, so I send it to you, and then you then need to withdraw it because you're going to buy. I suspect your bank is going to ask you where the money came from because it came through a Bitcoin exchange or something like that. So with the unbanked who are using Bitcoin and they haven't got as many controls and they haven't got this kind of same infrastructure or regulatory issues, do you think that they're actually going to be the driver for Bitcoin becoming this kind of an additional currency that is seen on the same level as, for example, the dollar and other fiat currencies? Esteban, what do you think?
I think in order to go there, you'll first need regulation in place. So I think there again that's one of the most important things. Yeah, with innovation comes regulation, and that's not only in the Bitcoin area. You also see it in other areas within the e-industry, like sharing economy. For example, that's also a good example. Legislators, tax authorities, they don't know how to deal with that. And again, I think that's the most important thing. If you want to make this grow and if you want to make it comparable to fiat, like at least to be at the same level or part of it or part of the whole financial system, I think there a lot needs to be done. in the sense of regulation, and also in the sense of AML and KYC regulation, in order to understand what needs to be done, and also the security for Bitcoin-related companies. So what I see in practice, for example, is clients who are calling me and they say, okay, listen, I don't have a license right now. We tried to get a license, but we cannot get a license. But what will happen if one of the countries which is important to me requires a license? Do I need to shut down business? Or can I continue with my business there? In some countries, you will need to pay VAT because it's treated as a service, which is ridiculous, but okay, that can happen. If they treat it that way, that's fine. You need to pay VAT GST, but then you're actually going to pay VAT GST on something which is treated as a service, but which is not regulated there. So there are a lot of things which a business needs to take into account, also in order to be safe themselves, because now this is just a gray area, and you don't know what it will be within the next few years. But people within the Bitcoin area, Bitcoin companies, they want to prevent being shut down. They want to prevent being penalized. They want to prevent a jail sentence. Anything can happen. So yeah, a lot needs to be done to get at that point. But I think if you are at that point, it will definitely be beneficial. For me, it was great to see that Floris was speaking here, because there you saw also the combination with, for example, taxation, and it can actually be helpful for governments in relation to combat fraud.
Great. Yeah, did someone have a question? I've been told we've got 5 minutes. You want to go first?
Jan from Emirates NBD. Just have a question regarding the regulation. If you have a new commodity, is actually regulation the first thing you ask for? Is it something you really need? Bitcoin has been developing without regulation in many places for quite a while. Is it really the next step? Even though there are some hurdles to it, but I was wondering what the panelists' opinion was on, which way to go. If you go into regulation, you get a whole lot of other problems.
Who wants to?
I'll jump in on that one. I think regulation actually hurts the growth at the early stages because it's too expensive, and it requires businesses, to slow down and look into things that are distracting them from the actual business itself. So I think at the early stages, it was kind of nice that we're actually able to sort of have a sandbox where we got to play around without any rules. Obviously, that's going to change with time, but at this time, I think my personal opinion is that regulations are not really necessarily needed. I think the KYC requirements are kind of understandable in certain levels, but other than that, I don't think they need to add any more layers to it, because it will actually hurt a lot of new startups from actually being able to start their business and going ahead and developing the company without substantial seed rounds at the beginning to actually be able to cope with all that legal work and stuff.
I basically tend to agree. On the other hand, let's say, there is the option if there is a certain amount of regulation, not like the BitLicense in New York, for example, which was way, way, way too much. If it's kind of reasonable regulation and basic KYC AML processes, that's something I can understand where they are coming from. And it could enable them to, let's say, cope with traditional financial service providers and get easier access to the financial world. So it can help growth in that direction, because then you enable direct access to these parties, which normally would say, okay, if you don't do the basic KYC AML stuff, I cannot work with you at all.
Okay, so we're doing 2 very quick questions, and if we've got long answers, we can talk afterwards. So would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. Jürgen Bilberg. I had a question. Would you agree with the statement that ease of use is one of the main blockers for mass adoption of Bitcoin? And if so, how do you see us overcoming that?
I'm not sure if this microphone is actually going to work this time, but I'll give it a try. Yeah, basically, I think the ease of use is a huge problem at the beginning of Bitcoin, is that you can't explain to an average human being how to create a paper wallet by putting Linux and printing out a paper offline mode. You lose the person at the first 3 words in that sentence. But as the time goes on, we're seeing more and more services like blockchain.info, online hosting places that can actually open a wallet and easily transact. But I think as the time goes on, we're going to see more and more user-friendly applications for Bitcoin, like cards that are coming out. I know Coinbase now has a card that actually works in stores as a Visa, and you can sort of swipe and pay. We're going to see more of that. We're going to see Bitcoin starting to really increase in its value, because common people like my mom will finally understand how to use it, right? And at this point, I can't explain to her, even with everything that's available right now, how to do it. And that's a real problem for adaptation. I do think it is a huge issue at this stage. Just like encryption, people don't know how to use it, basically.
Just one quick question also. What is your best tip for spreading adoption? How do you best spread this to people? And
Sorry, can that be a cliffhanger? Because there's a guy at the back who wants to ask a question, and then we have to close, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and he's bigger than you. I have one suggestion / observation and then a quick question.
Very
If you
quick.
want a model for success for Bitcoin in the GCC countries, then look at the existing model of remittances with the cash exchanges. There's billions going all over the place. Not one bank is involved anywhere, okay? Make that fit Bitcoin, and it might be successful over here. I move on to say, I have a hypothetical here. I have a group that has members in Yemen, in Saudi, in Iraq, in Tehran, in Syria. And they wish to move money back and forth amongst them, okay? What about Bitcoin technology will stop them from doing this?
So
Okay? I see this as being the elephant in the room, okay? Because of the region that you're in, okay? You're not gonna get many people to pile on board, okay, to participate in moving money across borders. Okay. But I'd like an answer to that. Is anything in the technology that's gonna stop me from using Bitcoin to send money to Tehran, to send money to Syria or Yemen?
So the question is there any kind of technology out there that's actually going to stop you from being able to send Bitcoin? That will stop this group from actually being able to. The answer is, unless you did what I think Libya did, where they essentially shut off BGP routers to the internet, and you basically cut off connection from the internet, the only way to shut down even these these countries from transferring and using Bitcoin with each other is to actually shut down the internet. That's the only way you can do it.
And on that note, thank you very much.
I hope that answers your question.
I've already pushed it on for time, but a panel are here for the rest of the afternoon, so they can answer any more questions. Thank you very much.